power isn't just found on the battlefield. It's not always won with a sword and shield. True, lasting power, the kind that builds empires and topples kings, is often forged in secrets, strategy, and gold. For nearly 2 centuries, one organization mastered all three. They were known as the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, but history remembers them by a simpler, more fearsome name, the Knights Templar. They're shrouded in legend, tied to the Holy Grail, and remembered for their military prowess in the Crusades. But their greatest weapon wasn't a lance or a longsword. It was finance. This order of monks, sworn to poverty, created an economic empire that stretched from the dusty roads of Jerusalem to the royal courts of London and Paris. They became what we might call the world's first multinational corporation and pioneered one of Europe's most trusted international banking systems. This is the story of how they did it, how their wealth made them untouchable, and how that same power painted a target on their backs, leading to one of the most brutal betrayals in history. Imagine a world without credit cards, without online banking, where carrying your life savings on a long journey meant risking robbery and death at every turn. Now, what if I told you that a secret society of warrior monks helped solve this problem 900 years ago by creating one of the first large-scale international banking systems? They became so powerful that they loaned money to kings and funded wars. This is the story of how the Knights Templar built a financial empire that would make them legends, and then led to their brutal, fiery end. To understand how the Templars became the bankers of Europe, we first need to understand the world they were born into. The year is 1119. The First Crusade has recently concluded, and Christians from across Europe are making the dangerous pilgrimage to Jerusalem. The journey was thousands of miles long, through treacherous mountains and forests prowled by bandits. For these pilgrims, the physical dangers were immense, but the financial risks were just as crippling. In the 12th century, there wasn't paper money as we know it. Wealth was physical. It was gold and silver coins, heavy and conspicuous. A pilgrim setting out from France to the Holy Land had to carry their entire fortune with them for a journey that could take months or even years. This made them walking targets. Brigands littered the pilgrimage routes, and many travelers never reached their destination, losing both their money and their lives. The dream of praying in the holy city was, for many, a death sentence. This is the problem a French knight named Hugues de Payens sought to solve. Around 1119, he and 8 other knights approached King Baldwin II of Jerusalem. They proposed a new kind of order, a brotherhood of monastic warriors. They would take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, just like monks, but they would also wield swords. Their sole mission, to protect Christian pilgrims on the perilous roads to Jerusalem. King Baldwin II granted them a headquarters in a wing of his palace on the Temple Mount, the site of the ancient Temple of Solomon. From this location, they took their name, the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, or the Templars. Initially, they were genuinely poor. With only 9 knights, they had few resources and relied on donations to survive. An early seal of the order even depicts 2 knights sharing a single horse, a powerful symbol of their initial poverty. But this destitution didn't last. In 1129, at the Council of Troyes, the order received the official backing of the Pope. With the endorsement of Bernard of Clairvaux, one of the most influential churchmen of the era, the Knights Templar became a favored charity. Donations poured in. Nobles, eager for spiritual favor, gave them vast tracts of land, castles, and money. A nobleman leaving for the Crusades might place all his assets under Templar management while he was away. The order that began with 9 impoverished knights was quickly becoming a wealthy institution. But it wasn't these donations alone that would build their empire. It was their solution to the pilgrims' deadly financial dilemma. The Templars' original mission was protection, but they soon realized that protecting pilgrims meant protecting their money. Carrying gold was dangerous, so the Templars devised a system to make the gold disappear, at least for the journey. This system was the letter of credit, a revolutionary idea that was the forerunner of the modern traveler's check. Here's how this brilliant system worked. A pilgrim in London could go to the local Templar commandery, their local branch office, so to speak. He'd deposit his gold coins. In return, he wouldn't get a heavy bag of foreign currency, but a piece of parchment. This letter of credit stated the amount deposited and was marked with a complex secret cipher known only to the Templars, making it incredibly difficult to forge. The pilgrim could then travel the long road to Jerusalem with nothing more than this light piece of parchment. With immense wealth came immense power. By the 13th century, the Knights Templar were power brokers. Their sole allegiance was to the Pope in Rome, meaning they were exempt from local laws and taxes and could pass freely across borders. They were, in effect, a sovereign entity with embassies, their commanderies, in every major kingdom. This unique status made them indispensable diplomats. Because they were seen as neutral, standing outside the petty squabbles of feudal lords, they often mediated disputes between kings. Their Grand Master was a figure of international importance, consulted on matters of war and state. They were trusted to broker major deals, like King Henry III of England's purchase of the island of Oleron. For a time, they effectively served as treasurers for the French crown, and if a king suspected financial malpractice, he'd call in a Templar to audit the books, knowing their reputation for integrity was unquestioned. However, this incredible success bred jealousy and suspicion. To outsiders, the Templars were becoming dangerously powerful and secretive. Their initiation rites and chapter meetings were held in private, and their financial records were a closely guarded secret. This secrecy, essential for their banking operations, fueled dark rumors. What were they doing behind closed doors? They lived in formidable castles and wore their iconic white mantles with the Red Cross, a symbol of power recognized across the continent. Nobles who had donated land now saw that land contributing to a power that dwarfed their own. Kings who had once been patrons now found themselves as debtors. King Philip IV of France, in particular, was deeply in debt to the order for his wars against England. This debt would prove fatal, not for the king but for his creditors. The Templars had become too big, too rich, and too independent. They had built a financial network that held Europe together, but in doing so, they'd made themselves a target. They were the ultimate insiders, operating in the highest echelons of power, but they were also outsiders, belonging to no kingdom. This paradox would be their undoing. The beginning of the end came on Friday, October 13, 1307. Many point to this date as a possible origin for the superstition around Friday the 13th, though its roots are likely more complex. At dawn, agents of King Philip IV of France launched a coordinated raid, arresting every Templar in the country simultaneously. The arrest warrant began with the chilling words, "God is not pleased. We have enemies of the faith in the kingdom." King Philip IV, known as Philip the Fair, was a ruthless and ambitious monarch. He saw the Templars' wealth as the solution to his own bankruptcy and their independence as a threat to his authority. For years, his ministers had secretly compiled a list of shocking charges against the order: heresy, spitting on the cross, idol worship of a mysterious head known as Baphomet, and sodomy. With the Templars imprisoned, Philip unleashed the full force of medieval torture. Under extreme duress, many knights confessed to the fabricated charges. The Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, also confessed under torture, a confession he would later retract. The confessions, however false, gave Philip the public justification he needed to pressure Pope Clement V to dissolve the order. The Pope was in a weak position. He was a Frenchman who owed his papacy to Philip and had moved the papal court to Avignon, France, making him highly susceptible to the king's influence. While Philip drove the persecution in France, the reaction elsewhere was mixed. In places like Portugal and Spain, where the Templars were still vital in the fight against Moorish kingdoms, the order was largely cleared of wrongdoing and simply rebranded, its assets transferred to new orders like the Order of Christ. But in France, there was no mercy. In 1312, under immense pressure, Pope Clement V officially dissolved the Knights Templar. He didn't declare them guilty of heresy but disbanded them due to the public scandal. Their assets were ordered to be transferred to their rivals, the Knights Hospitaller, though Philip IV made sure a large portion was diverted to the French treasury to cover the costs of the trial, effectively cancelling his own debts. The final, tragic act came in 1314. Jacques de Molay and another high-ranking Templar were brought before a public scaffold in Paris to repeat their forced confessions. Instead, they recanted, proclaiming their innocence and that of the order. Enraged, King Philip ordered them burned at the stake that very evening. Legend says that as the flames rose, de Molay cursed both King Philip and Pope Clement, summoning them to God's judgment. While this curse is likely a later invention, both the Pope and the King were indeed dead before the year was out. The Knights Templar were destroyed as suddenly and brutally as they had risen to power. In less than 2 centuries, they went from 9 poor knights to an international economic powerhouse, only to be wiped out in just 7 years. Their story is a powerful lesson on the relationship between innovation, wealth, and power. They showed that by providing a unique and essential solution to a major problem, an organization can achieve incredible influence. Their financial innovations laid the groundwork for modern banking. The concepts of letters of credit, asset management, and complex financial services didn't die with them. They were adopted and evolved by others who followed. The Templars proved that a trusted, secure network can be the most valuable asset of all. Though their order was disbanded, the mystery of the Templars endures, fueling conspiracy theories about lost treasures and secret societies. They were warriors, monks, and bankers. They built an empire of gold and faith, and in the end, they were consumed by the very power they had created. Their rise and fall remains one of history's most dramatic sagas of wealth, power, and ultimate betrayal. Thank you for joining us on Wealth Saga. If you want to explore more stories of the empires of wealth, watch my next video on the channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to know how history's secrets shaped our modern world.